All right, this is the first lecture for chapter 5 and 6. I'm going to get my little laser light pointer thing set up here. Just something I've been throwing on all of the new presentations for this year is the little guy. It's different for every video. This happens to be a killdeer. These are little guys that you kind of see running around in the park and making all sorts of noise. They're interesting because they leave their nest on the ground. So many times they're making that much noise because they don't want you near their nest. All right, as I mentioned, is chapter 5 and 6, and this is on climate and biomes, a whole 2 chapters. So weather and climate, you guys are probably pretty familiar with this. Weather is what you experience today or this week, and climate is a long-term trend of what we would kind of expect. And of course, we are seeing that, the climate has been changing. It's not really something that is up for debate anymore. We can see it very clearly. An argument might be that, well, maybe it's going to come back down. And there's no evidence to that trend or thought of we're going to go in that way. All right, so one of the things you may have learned in some geo class once upon a time is there are these different layers of the atmosphere. Just based upon, they give them different names because what's going on. And you can kind of see it here. As you go up in elevation, there's a temperature change going back and forth, which is kind of interesting. If you're up flying in a plane, let's say that 30,000 feet, whatever you like, and you can kind of gauge on this little chart here, it's really, really, really cold outside, like -30, -40 degrees, if you're out flying in a plane. Of course, you're on the inside. Outside, it's really, really cold. But something interesting happens once you get to a certain elevation, that the temperature will actually start to go back up and gets warm. Now, you also have to understand that there's not as much stuff out there. So you wouldn't necessarily feel hot necessarily because there's not as much atmosphere that you're interacting with. So that's a little bit maybe difficult for us to get our minds around because it's just not how we live. But the reason for that increase in temperature is because of the ozone. So the amount of high energy light coming from the sun is interacting with oxygen in the atmosphere and it's absorbing it. So in the absorption, the temperature increases for the oxygen and it turns into ozone. There's a whole chemical reaction that takes place. Maybe we'll go over in class now. If we don't do it now, we'll do it much later in the future. But then you can see once you get up to what's called the stratopause, they all have these pause names at a breaking point, that it changes again. The mesosphere, not much is going on. Pretty much that's just where the burn up, as this picture kind of shows, where you start hitting atmosphere. That's where you start getting more of a change. So things start burning up in that layer. And then of course you get higher up there, way out, you go to the thermosphere. And that's pretty much the end of the atmosphere that we take a look at. And you can see on the little bullet points there are some comments that I'm making. I'm not going to go into those because you can read them yourself. Okay, this is a common question that a lot of people get wrong as far as what accounts for our seasons. And just the knee-jerk reaction is like, well, we're closest to the sun, so therefore that's summer. Well, that's only for, well, it just doesn't work. I was to say it's only for a certain half of the hemisphere. So when we have summer, people in Australia are having their relative winter, and then just vice versa. So right now, as we're moving into winter, they're moving into summer. So that idea of being close or far away just doesn't work. What actually is what affects our seasons is the tilt of the Earth towards the sun. So if we use a little pointer here and point to these guys here, this one and this one, we just came out of this equinox here, and notice it's tilted, kind of on that angle there, that 23.5 degree tilt. But everybody on the planet gets that same amount of sunlight on those particular days. In other words, the tilt doesn't really come into play in those two positions because it's kind of like offset. Where it comes into play is on the winter and the summer position, because now it's either tilted, if you think of North America, tilted towards the sun over here in the summer, or tilted away from the sun in the winter. And to get a better understanding of that, we'll go over to this slide. And you can see like you have this solar energy coming from the sun. And these are all equal portions of the sun's energy coming in. But notice on how they hit the Earth. If you're on the equator, you're getting all that energy in a very small area. Where that same amount of energy up at the poles, by the time it strikes the Earth, it is very much spread out on the surface. So all of that energy has to be spread out. So therefore, it's cooler in those locations. They don't get as much energy from the sun. So that's why it's so much warmer at the equator as it is opposed to being at the poles. A couple of vocab words which we'll hit on a couple times here. I will mention here. Albedo. You can almost interchange that word with reflectivity. So something that has high albedo is high reflectivity. Snow and ice. Something that has low albedo is low reflectivity. Blacktop dirt, open ocean, things like that. And these are just some comparatives of albedo. And this is something that contributes to a positive feedback loop. Remember, in this case, positive is not necessarily good. It just means it keeps going that direction. So the example I'm going to give is sea ice here. If the sun's energy hits ice, a lot of it bounces away and doesn't become absorbed. Yet if it hits the water, melted ice, a lot of it is absorbed and therefore it continues to heat, and there that pattern just keeps on continuing. So this is part of the problem of the polar ice caps melting, is because it's changing the surface reflectivity from something that's very reflective, ice and snow, to something that is very absorbent, the ocean, blue, dark. All right, this is a little video that I'm actually not going to play. Maybe I'll play it in class if I remember. It just shows kind of how you have cold fronts and warm fronts and why you get storms. I'll just mention really quick, if you have a cold front coming in, it's heavy, dense air, and it pushes the warm, wet air up, and therefore you get thunderstorms. And just the opposite, but less exciting, if you have a warm front pushing in, it also will move up. The warm air will always rise above the cold. The cold air is what's dense. All right, so air circulating. I could read through these and it won't make as much sense until we have a picture to take a look at. So here we go. This is what's called a Hadley cell, and this is a very specific one. So just because you have these circular cells, they're not all Hadley cells, just the ones at the equator. So you can read that on your own, but I'll just kind of describe what's going on here. It's hot at the equator, so air goes up. Now this is a giant area, so this is going from the equator, which is 0 degrees, up to 30 degrees north and 30 degrees south. So this isn't something that's in a very small area. It's a huge area. So the air is rising at the equator, and as it rises, it cools. And as it cools, it drops its moisture, rainforests. That's what's going on here at the equator. And now you have this cold, dry air sitting up here at the equator. But think of this, it's a conveyor belt, though. It has to move. It has to go somewhere. So it's pushed out of the way, and it goes north. And as it's descending, it is warming and sucking up moisture, because warm air can hold more moisture than cold air. So as it gets towards the ground, it becomes warm because the ground is warm and has sucked up moisture. It's not going to rain, which influences why these locations are deserts. And then it just keeps on going, picking up moisture, gets to the equator, rises, drops its precipitation again. And you get this cycle that goes on and on. This ITCZ is the, I should have looked this up before I got there, Intertropical Convergence Zone. Intertropical Convergence Zone, which is a very specific location at the equator where those two cells meet. Yeah, that's a good spot to go. Okay. And this just kind of shows that repeating pattern that these were those two Hadley cells we had on the previous slide. And then, of course, you have a reverse trend. Here you have those deserts where it's falling and coming to Earth, and it's very dry. And kind of near us, right around we're at 45 degrees. This is 60, but it also explains why there are forests kind of by us. We have deciduous forests, and you have the evergreen forests taiga hanging out up here. But this helps us explain or understand why you have forests at some locations, the equator, and at 60 north and 60 south, and why you have deserts right around 30 degrees and 30 degrees north and south. And that gives us some of these biomes that we'll talk about more on the next presentation.